In this video, we're going to start weaving a bean pot basket, starting with the base. Hey there, welcome to Basket Weaving with Textile Indie. If you're new here, my name is Brittany. I'm a basket weaver and fiber artist, and here on the channel, I teach all about basket weaving. We're going to start a 3-part series on a bean pot basket, which is a traditional style of basket that would have been used to harvest beans in the garden. We're going to create a round base, and we're going to twine that base to create a nice solid foundation. Then we'll weave in continuous weave starting in video 2 and then finish off with a rim and a swing handle in videos 3. First up, you're going to need to cut the stakes for this basket and then mark the centers. If you need a reference to remember how to cut stakes, if you've watched any of my other videos, you can reference my cross stitch napkin basket video 1 where I go over that technique and show you how to cut the stakes. The lengths and the information on the pattern can be found in the instruction manual that's linked in the description below. The first step to starting a base is to cut your stakes. So if you've done that already, go ahead and bundle them up, tuck them into your water bin, and then tap off the excess water on your towel. We're going to start with half of the stakes. So go ahead and count those out, grab half of your stakes and set the other half aside for later. We're going to work with this first set to begin with. Now you have your center mark marked on each of these stakes at that center point and on the rough side. So we're going to match these center points up and we're going to create a spoked basket for this basket. So I want you to start laying these out in front of you like I'm doing, matching up that center point and circling these around so that you're creating a spiral, or I like to think of it as slices of a pie. So I'm creating these different sections like I'm cutting a pie or a pizza. So once you have that initial set laid out like so, we're going to take the spoke weight and lay this on top so that this stays in place. And now you can come in and look at each of these spaces here. Some of these are a little bit bigger, so I'm going to shift the spokes around until by eyeballing it, I can see that they're about the same size. This doesn't have to be exact, but it's a good thing to start out with to ensure that you generally have these spaced out where you want them. Now I'm going to move the spoke weight, hold my stakes down and move the spoke weight here to the side closest to me because we're going to twine this base. And I like to start twining away from me so I have a good amount of space to start twining before I need to shift. So here, grab 2 pieces of round reed, and I've already previously tucked these into my water bin, so go ahead and get yours wet. If you're using the Textile Indie kit, you can grab that bundle and stick the whole thing in the water and just pull out pieces as you need them. Whatever excess you end up having, you can hang to dry while you finish the rest of your basket and then store for a future project. We're going to take 2 ends of 2 separate pieces of round reed and we're going to clamp this onto our project here. So I'm going to clamp this guy right on top of this spoke like so, and then this next piece, the second piece of round reed, on top of the following spoke. And when you work in a round shape, this round spiral shape, the stakes all of a sudden become spokes. I'm not entirely sure why, it's just basketry terminology. So if I reference them as spokes or stakes, I'm referring to these pieces that are the foundation of our basket. So attaching these round reeds to our spokes, I'm going to take the one that's on this first spoke, the first piece on the left, and I'm going to tuck it under this next clamped piece. So just getting it out of my way here. And now I like to teach twining as if you have a resting hand, your left hand. You're going to rest your round reed into your left hand, and then working with one piece at a time, we're always going to return our round reed back to our left hand. If you are left-handed, use your right hand as your resting hand and you'll work in the opposite direction. From right to left, I am going to weave left to right. Now this piece right here is on top of the next stake moving towards the right. So I'm going to bring that piece up and under the following stake like so. And I'm trying to tuck it as close in between those stakes as possible without moving it too far away. So I don't want it to move all the way over here or else I won't have much room between my next stakes. I need that middle center mark to stay put in place, but these to come down and press in fairly closely. So now this piece is on top. I've got my pieces back in my resting hand. This piece right here, I'm going to bring up and over this following stake. And I've moved a little bit, so I'm going to inch this in there. And you may have to make some adjustments because you need enough space between the spokes for this little crisscross to happen between the spokes. And so if that amount of reed needs to move further away from the center, that's totally fine. You can have a little gap here. That's going to get covered by our next set of spokes. So again, back to my resting hand, the piece that's on top here is going to come up and under the following spoke and back to my resting hand. Now this piece right here is on top of this next spoke. It's going to come under the following spoke. And I'm trying to create a circle right around that center area. I'm going to move my spoke weight out of the way so I can work here. Now another thing with twining for this amount of time is that your twining ends are going to get tangled up like the ends of a braid. They get twisted around each other. So you need to pull on one length to untwist or kind of shake out that twist so that you can keep working without that frustration. So once those get untwisted, you'll go back to your resting hand. The piece on top goes under the following spoke, like so. Back to your resting hand, the piece on top goes under the following spoke. And we're trying to catch all of these spokes as we go around. Now, it can be tricky to see twining upside down or backwards from what you started. So one of the reasons I like having my piece set on a towel is that I can rotate the entire towel without moving my basket so it doesn't mess up what I'm working on. I'm going to move that spoke weight and I'll go back to my resting hand. Now I'm looking at the twining the same way that I originally started with, and so I'll be able to maintain that pattern of the piece on top moves out and away and under the following. Now, if you've done any other baskets with me that had twining involved, you know that we're aiming to get each piece to switch position. So we're getting that twist or crisscross between the stakes. So these pieces, they're not running in parallel side by side. They're crisscrossing and then switching, crisscrossing, switching, crisscrossing. So in between each stake, we get a little crisscross. And if you follow that line, this piece is closest to the center here. And then when you move to the next space over, it's furthest from the center. So it moved from this position to this position. And then it's going to move back and forth like this as we move around that spiral. So now I'm almost to my clamps. I'm going to move these out of the way so that they're not in my way, and continue this twining motion until I meet up with those ends. And now I'm going to kind of create my stitches and push up against those ends. So these starting ends are going to stick up like this, and that's okay for now. We'll trim them later. Don't worry about them right now. We need that extra length to work with for the moment. And I have a pretty decent circle here. If you've ended up with an oval shape, go ahead and press this out until it's kind of shaped around in a circle, and the spaces between your stakes, these little mini pizza slices, are about the same size. This one's a little bit smaller, so I'm going to shift this around until it looks more even. Now we're going to weave another round in twining. So continue to work. You can take your spoke weight off because the spokes are held in place. Now you can lift this up and rotate it around. Again, I highly suggest rotating your piece to twine because then you can always be working on that one side and you don't have to twist your body awkwardly around the basket. So what I'll do is come in with my resting hand, get oriented so both ends are on top, and then this piece that's on top of this stake is going to go under the following stake, and I want to pull these in tight. We're going for a nice solid base, so we want these rows packed nice and snug so there's no gapping. So I'm going to continue, and you'll notice I'm bringing the one on top and underneath and then packing it in, and then I rotate the basket a little bit. Go back to my resting hand, do 1 or 2 twine stitches, a stitch being around one spoke. Then I'll continue around. When you run out of length of the round reed, we're going to splice in a new piece. So I'm going to finish this off so that this end lands on top here. This one would come under like so. This guy I'm going to cut so that this tail just goes to the far edge of this stake. It can sit right on top of that stake. And now I'm going to grab a new piece of round reed. You want to make sure this is damp and ready to work with. And I'm going to lay this end right on top of that ending end. So I ended right here. I'm going to lay this right here, clamp that in place so that they're landing on the same stake. Make sure you get that in your clamp so that it doesn't pull out on you. And now we'll go back to our twining. So this one is on top here. I'm going to go underneath. This one's on top. I'm going to go underneath. This guy just barely is making it to this next stake. So I'm going to twine that under and then start a new piece on this one as well. So again, right on top, I'll crisscross that like so. Clamp this in place so that it doesn't move on me, and then continue twining. When you get back to those tails, you can remove the clamp and twine up right next to it. This next row is going to crimp this in place, so press that row snug up against those tails and then continue twining for the suggested number of rows. If your pieces ever end up under your stakes like this, that can be very disorienting. So bring your pieces back to the top, put them back in your left hand or your resting hand, and that'll reorient you to continue working. And you've completed a round all the way around the basket. When you've come back to the spokes where your starting tails right here in the middle are sticking up. So this is a complete round here, and this is a complete round here because I have a tail and a tail on each of these spokes. When you've done 7 rounds and you've come back to where you started, so these starting ends, we're going to pause and incorporate the next set of spokes. So to count this, you'll count each one of these that's on top of a spoke. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you're counting the ones where you began, you're going to count that tail as 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there, I've ended where I've started. When you've done 7 rounds and you've come back to where you started, so these starting ends, we're going to pause and incorporate the next set of spokes. So to count this, you'll count each one of these that's on top of a spoke. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you're counting the ones where you began, you're going to count that tail as 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there, I've ended where I've started. I'm going to come in, and just to be sure, I'm going to dunk these spokes into the water bin once again, tap them off. This will just make sure that they're still damp and pliable enough to work with. And now with this second set of spokes, we're going to come in and lay these in between the previous set, matching up that center mark with the center of the basket. You can use your spoke weight to hold these in place as you put them down on your basket. So that one's between those two. I'm going to go between these two. And if you systematize this, just pick a spot to start and then spiral out from there. That'll make sure you don't accidentally skip a space. And you'll put one in on one side, and then obviously it'll travel across to directly across from itself. So you're filling 2 spaces with 1 spoke. So you're getting all the way across and filling this side as well as this side. So I'm going to press the spoke weight on top there, and now bring your round reed back to the surface so that it's on top. And now we're going to incorporate this next set of spokes into our twining. So wherever you ended, my starting ends were down in here. Now I'm on this spoke. I'm going to continue twining, but my stitches are going to have to be a little bit tighter, and I'm going to have to work on packing between these spokes because they've gotten closer together. So come in, making sure that each stitch lands really close to that previous row. And you may have to move the spoke close to each other in order to get that space to do a twining stitch. So we're twining, incorporating this new set in place. And again, if your reeds tangle, you'll need to shake out or pull on one length to get that twist out. we're going to do 3 rounds incorporating these new spokes into place. Now that all my spokes are secure, I can start to move the basket again without rotating the towel. And I'm continuing to press these rows or each stitch close against the previous row so that I remove any spacings. Reed does shrink as it dries, and so whenever there's an opportunity to pack your rows close together, go ahead and pack pretty tightly, because as the reed dries, it's going to open up any gaps that already exist and just make them a little bit bigger. So if you can avoid those gaps here while it's damp and a little bit swollen, then once it's shrunk down to its normal size, you won't have any added looseness or gapping. If I'm not using my left hand as a resting hand, if you're feeling comfortable with the twining pattern and you don't need that as a reference, what I like to do is come in, as I twine my stitch with my right hand, I come in and I pull that stitch tight with my left hand. So I'm kind of working both hands simultaneously to do each stitch. So I do the right hand stitch and then pull in with my left hand. Right hand stitch and then pack that in. And pulling is often easier than pushing. So if you can pull that towards you, you'll get it packed in a lot more than if you're trying to push it away. And anytime you need to incorporate a new piece of round reed, if you're using up shorter pieces and you want to use up some scraps, feel free to do that for this kind of bottom. You'll just incorporate reed whenever you need to. In this piece, I have a kind of crack here, so I'm going to cut away the broken bit, and then incorporate this in again. So I'm just splicing a new piece right there. And I'm almost done. I'm almost finished with this last round, so it is going to be a somewhat short piece before I cut this length, but that's okay. The twining is kind of a lock stitch, so it is going to hold that piece of reed in place. So if you're getting close to the end and you need to add a new length in, feel free to do that. It will lock stitch in place. Okay, now my ending ends need to end right here and right here. And the way I'm looking at that is this piece counts as my 3rd row on this spoke. It also happens to be where my starting end, right in here, I have 2 little tails peeking out. That's where my starting end's peeking out. So count 3 on this stake that you added, and then cut that, sorry, spoke. And then this guy we're going to cut on the following spoke. So I have a tail on each spoke right next to where I started inside at the middle of the base. And that is twining the base of a basket to create a round basket shape. Sign up for the Textile Indie email list using the link in the description below to get a weekly email about basket weaving and fiber arts and get updated whenever we put out a new video. Subscribe and like this video and watch this video for more basket weaving content. I'll see you in the next one. Happy making. Bye.